welcome into the Boise State Game Pants Esports Arena. We're back with more League of Legends, this time in Upsurge, and two of the top collegiate League of Legends programs going at it. Boise State and Bethany Lutheran here in a best of three just around the corner. I am Michael Fisher, joined by Daniel Glovely Clock to call all of the action. And Glovely, we're used to Boise State being the favorite. This time, probably not the case. Bethany Lutheran considered one of the top 10 teams by a lot of coaches in League of Legends. Boise State definitely with an uphill battle here tonight.
Definitely. The Vikings have an incredibly skilled team across the board. Even just looking at some of their stats before the game begins, we've got a lot of powerful champions, some of whom are very meta right now. We saw a lot of focus on that Camille in the top lane, for example.
And the one thing that's going to be interesting for Boise State is, of course, this week has been the debut of the new Boise State in terms of roster positioning. The roster hasn't changed, but the lanes have. From my discussions with the Boise State coaches, it sounds like they're going to keep that lineup. Goblin in the top lane, Red Hot's in the jungle, Ascent, of course, still in the mid lane, Ethug now in the bot lane as the AD carry, and Dean as the support for this matchup. We've seen two matches for Boise State, one against Colorado State and then one against Air Force last night. What are your takeaways from this new Boise State roster? Where do you think it's better, and do you think they'll have any challenges now with this lineup going into a very talented Bethany Lutheran team?
I do think that they've put a lot of their carry potential in the bottom side of the map. Historically speaking, Boise State really favoring using Ethug and Dean to get 2 lanes ahead. By putting them together, you're sort of putting all of your eggs in one basket. If they get ahead, great, you've got a super fed carry that's going to push you throughout the game. If they don't get ahead, then you're relying on Ascent or Red Hots to potentially find opportunities, or even Goblin up in that top lane.
Yeah, and what do you think we're going to see from Goblin and Red Hots? Because, we know what Ethug wants to do. He's probably going to play the Twitch if it gets banned away. We saw a great Vayne game. I know he had messed around with it a little bit in scrims in the jungle from what I've been told before, so those are probably his comfort picks. Let's start with Goblin. I know top lane's where you call your home, Glovely. What are some safe champions that you think we'll see him play a lot of in kind of this role of just don't die and then join the team as sort of a utility later on?
Well, if you're talking about sustain and utility for your team, you can't go wrong with a Maokai. Great sustain overall, has engage for your team, very tanky. We saw him play the Scion, and I think that's a great champion as well.
See the Upsurge League here, the division. Boise State is in a mix of very talented college teams, as we're going to see tonight with Bethany Lutheran, and a mix of amateur teams. Boise State has played a couple of those as well earlier on in this season. So definitely a very, very talented group. Based on the Summoner rankings, I'd have to assume, as we see that Bethany Esports A and B are in this group, have to assume this is the A team, as there are a lot of Grandmasters, a Challenger in here as well. So Boise State definitely going to be very interesting. I think mid lane might be my favorite matchup, Ascent going into maybe the best mid laner he's played against. But let's talk about Red Hots now. We've seen this before. He was in the jungle before we got Ethug. He played a lot of Nunu. Then that Nunu got taken away, and Boise State started to collapse. So do you think Nunu might be a shockingly high priority ban for Bethany Lutheran, or do you think they'll let it through?
I do think it's something to consider. Nunu gives a lot of utility just in his ability to control objectives, and of course the ability to quickly get around, roam from lane to lane, engage for his team. So it is a very valuable champion for Red Hots. We do know that he has a deeper champion pool than that, and it's been a while since the last time we saw him in the jungle. He certainly had a lot of time to be able to practice even some of those champions that he played before, and some of them even rose a little in prominence.
Yeah, I think the other thing that's really interesting that Boise State, of course, is in a unique position with is a lot of teams, had they pulled off something that Boise State had pulled off, unless you were watching a very specific stream, you would never know. We're a little bit more open about what we play. Do you think Bethany Lutheran is going to be ready for the Ethug AD carry role? Because, you're probably banning Twitch if you know he's ADC, and you're probably banning Kindred if you think he's a jungle. Do you think the Vikings in Game 1 are going to know where Ethug and the rest of Boise State is going?
I do think that they're going to have to consider the fact that Boise State is going to be able to flex these lanes and roles. It's entirely true that they have been focusing on having Ethug in that bot lane position, but if the Kindred is still up, they have the ability to change their lanes back if they want to run that Kindred and they want to flex him into that jungle position.
So get ready to drop into the draft. Of course, a reminder, support your team, celebrate the successes, and then be, of course, respectful to the other team. The mods can make sure that if you're not being respectful, we'll make sure we take care of you. Now, we know the mods might be banning some people. What do you think are the priority bans for the teams as we get into the draft for game number 1?
I think the Rumble ban is always on the table. That's kind of what we expect going into Ascent. Whenever he gets that Rumble, it never ends well for the other team. Kindred possibly, if they're expecting Ethug to take that jungle position. So unless they've got hard counters for either of those champions, I don't think that those are champions they want to let through. On Boise State's side, though, I think that Camille is a very dangerous pick up in that top lane, especially going into Goblin, who probably wants to play relatively safe. Other champions that I think they might want to take out, I saw that there was a lot of Samira being played, and even though she's going to be taking a hit soon, this might be her last chance.
Yeah, I think the one thing that is interesting is Boise State versus Bethany and Lutheran here in the Upsurge League. Bethany and Lutheran, one of the best teams in Collegiate League of Legends. Boise State's going to have their work cut out for them. We saw Colorado State on Wednesday let the Rumble go through and game one pick the Aurelia. Mid laner for Bethany Lutheran has been playing actually a shockingly high number of Aurelia. I think it's his most played champion this season, and he is a challenger player, so you know he has something maybe up his sleeve. Do you think Bethany Lutheran tries to play, pun intended, with fire in that mid lane and believe that Aurelia is still a good matchup into Rumble? Because Colorado State had some flashes. They didn't lose the lane per se, but then into the mid game is where Ascent pulled ahead. Do you think Bethany Lutheran tries the same thing, or do you think they respect the Rumble and just make sure it doesn't even get to be played?
I think Aurelia is something that Boise State might actually consider banning just because of its prevalence. They can flex it both into their top and mid lanes based on their history. And of course, we did see that played into the Rumble. The Rumble does have a somewhat favorable matchup in that he's able to ignore Aurelia's defenses, but he doesn't have the sustain to be able to stay in lane with that Aurelia for long periods of time.
Gonna hop right into the draft here between these teams, Boise State and Bethany Lutheran. Heckram gonna be the first one banned away here. That is Bethany Lutheran. The sides will swap, and that to me tells me that Bethany Lutheran's still under the understanding that that might be Ethug in the jungle and not Red Hots, as there's that Samira we were discussing to be taken away first.
Definitely, it is a powerful champion. Even though there's some controversial nerfs planning to come through, there's the Rumble. Everybody expects it. Sorry, Ascent, you're not going to have that champion available for you. One more ban going to be available, though, for the side of the Vikings. But first, Boise State has their chance to take a big pick off the board. Who are they going to remove?
There's the Aurelia.
There's the Aurelia.
We probably thought Aurelia, Camille, X was kind of our three predicted bans. Maybe Samira sneaking up in there. It's what the AD carry for Bethany Lutheran still loves to play. There's the Twitch. Interesting that Kindred's technically on the table if Ethug wants to go back to his jungle roots. I think they're going to keep him in the bot lane, but it is very interesting because you don't think you'd see Red Hots play Hecarim, so Bethany Lutheran kind of covering all of their bases here and almost maybe baiting Ethug to try and get back in the jungle, leaving Kindred up.
It could be very dangerous. Actually, Olaf is going to be the one taking off the table, so that dangerous Camille is still going to be available for that top lane. Who knows? Maybe Red Hots has been practicing his Camille. They could try and steal it away that way, but there is going to be first pick. That's the Udyr. What a champion, surprisingly rising to prominence recently in the meta, and Kaisa going to be the answer for Boise State on the other side.
Yeah, poor Udyr, right as he rises to prominence, he's getting a rework. He wins that poll by a long mile, which I still think should have gone to Shyvana, but we can talk about that another time. The Kaisa is interesting because that really, for Boise State, doesn't give much away. Like we said, we're under the impression it's Ethug AD carry, but with Kindred available, you don't ever know. And then there's the Shen. That's just a safe laner. We've seen Red Hots play it. Goblin played it as well. Boise State, we talk about being able to flex champions. Now they're being able to flex summoners, and I think that brings a whole new card to the table.
Definitely, and that Shen in particular, a very good champion in the top lane. You mentioned how it was safe, but it also has the ability to create global pressure for the rest of your team, as well as providing a lot of protection. Set looks like it's going to be the answer. It could be a flex into that bottom side of the map, but also does fairly well into the Shen.
Yeah, I didn't see a lot of the aggro supports from Bethany Lutheran, a lot more of the traditional Alistar, Karma, more of those traditional champions you'd think of as supports, but Set always has that ability to go wherever he wants. And there's the Lucian pick. I think that might be going mid. It's something that Frost, the mid laner for Bethany Lutheran, has played quite a bit of, but once again, it has that sort of versatility to go wherever it wants, and I'll be curious to see where Bethany Lutheran wants to go, as well as where Boise State wants to go with this last pick that might maybe give away exactly the roster that Boise State is going to be fielding against the Vikings. There's that Victor, something that Ascent has played from time to time with Rumble banned away, and something he's played pretty well for the most part.
So most importantly, it's that jungle and AD carry, or pardon, it's going to be jungle and the support lane that are going to be completely unknown here for us. So it most likely will still be Ethug down there in that bottom lane. But then again, we've seen Goblin on this Kai'Sa many times.
There's the Draven ban, so Boise State not thinking Lucian's going in the bot lane. There's the Seraphine. Interesting. We haven't seen Dean play a lot of that Seraphine. I know he likes to stick with his traditional supports when he can. We saw that with Ethug in his first game, and there's that Ezreal. So Boise State aggressively targeting that bot lane of Bethany and Lutherian, which to me makes me think that's where they want Ethug to go, and they want him to dominate. 3 bans going towards that bot side.
Interestingly enough, they leave the Jhin up, and that's been kind of the next AD carry after Kai'Sa in terms of who you want to pick for your team, in terms of just who's meta right now. But there are still a lot of good AD carries up on the field. We've seen Ashe. I personally think Sivir's pretty good. Misfortune, of course, has been really good. Karma going to be taken off the table, so Boise State one more pick before they have to hand things off to the Vikings.
Now, all 4 bans in Phase 2 targeting that bot lane from both teams. Clearly a point of emphasis. Be curious to see if that is maybe where Udyr favors. There's the Nunu. That pretty much all but guarantees we're going to get Goblin in the top lane and Red Hot's in the jungle. Shocked that made it through, because I felt like when Red Hot was last in the jungle last spring, Nunu was really strong. Once it got taken away, Boise State's play did start to just drop a little bit, so I'm shocked that they were able to let that one through, especially with the Seraphine. I think banning Nunu over Seraphine would have been a great call if you're a Bethany Lutheran fan. And now I'm curious where the Vikings want to go. There's that Brand, who's someone we haven't really seen a lot of play in the bot lane since the item changes, but I'd still have to think he's probably going bot lane as the support, because you rarely see him in the mid.
It's true. I mean, Riot did try to make some changes to make him a bit more viable for those mid lane Brand players, and I think that the Leandry's Torment item, really great item on him, especially since he can buy it so early in the game, have that mythic, as opposed to beforehand when he didn't get any mana out of it. Thresh is going to be the lock-in, so that's the support. I think that is in fact going to be a Brand mid, unless that's a Brand bot lane. One more option available for Boise State. They have the support role unfilled out, unless they're planning on running Shen or Nunu in that spot.
I would highly doubt it's going to be Nunu, maybe Shen, but I think they want to put Goblin on something he definitely feels comfortable on. And we've seen that Ethug has a tendency to go very, very ham, so the Stand United, of course, going to be very huge for him. And there's that Nautilus picked up, so a pair of hook champions in the bot side. And I have to think Bethany and Lutheran probably won draft just on the sense that they made Boise State waste a couple of bans that really weren't even needed, because that Lucian looks like it's going bot lane as far as we can tell, unless it is some sort of crazy Brand Thresh comp that Bethany Lutheran's trying out, because I would have to think that's not the case, though.
I am certainly trying to figure out exactly what their plan is. Brand is such an interesting champion. We don't see him a whole lot because he sometimes is very feast or famine. If he gets going, if he gets those Dark Harvest stacks, if he starts burning through team members, he's such a terror, especially in my solo queue games. But when you get up to the competitive level, the players have a much easier time playing around that Pillar of Flame and being able to dodge all those skill shots. So very interesting pick. I'm interested to see what they can pull out with it.
Yeah, Brand, I mean, he kind of rose to prominence at the very end of last season when we saw the aggressive supports. I think in the preseason, burned Brand. I mean, I guess pun intended, not really, though, because the Leandries plus his passive, there was just so many ways where you could hit somebody with an ability, walk away, and then you would get, you know, you're legendary. You wouldn't even know where they are on the map because they just died. So it is an interesting pick. I think it could work in the bot lane if you are going for some kind of cheese comp, but I'm really interested to see how Boise State does into this, because you clearly see they put a ton of emphasis on trying to make that bot lane for Bethany Lutheran as weak as possible with the bans. It's Boise State, it's Bethany Lutheran, game 1 in the Upsurge Premier League. We'll see if the Broncos' new look comp of Goblin in the top lane, Red Hot's in the jungle, and Ethug in the AD carry role will be as successful as it's been in CeeLo, where the Broncos are currently undefeated, taking down Colorado State and Air Force. And I would have to say right now, Glovely, Kai'Sa, we haven't seen Ethug on it, so that unknown makes me feel like Bethany Lutheran might have a bit of an edge. But she's the best AD carry in the game for a reason, and if anyone can figure it out, it's going to be Ethug.
Definitely, and they have built the team composition around the Kai'Sa. If you look across all of the other members, all of them have some form of hard crowd control, which will make it much easier for Kai'Sa to be able to proc her passive multiple times.
Well, we mentioned LoL, we mentioned this new comp, so let's take a look back to the first time Boise State debuted this comp, and let's look at some of the highlights for the Broncos' win over Colorado State earlier this week. As well, so a very, very interesting choice here by Boise State. We'll see how it all shapes up. Colorado State and Boise State, the Broncos, the defending LoL champions. Rudy gonna try and run away. Biggest snowball ever is gonna knock him up in the air. Geechee and DJ Kush trying to get away from Red Hots, who's trying to keep as many roots on them as possible. Boise State's gonna flash in. They're gonna take down one. Can they get DJ Kush? Gonna try and dash away to safety. Ascent is overheated, but he's gonna have to be careful with tower aggro. E-Thug makes him go pop, and Boise State's on that top inhibitor turret.
And a lot of that was...
Nice tumble there. E-Thug trying to stay alive. There's a taunt and a knock from the snowball, and that is a dead Renekton. And DJ Kush now caught out all alone. Kapari jumped back into the fight. Ascent's going to make it pay once again. They do take down Dean, but it isn't going to be enough besides a blip for Colorado State. They will lose DJ Kush as well. It is a 4-for-1 as Rudy... or no, they have no vision. Nice knock out of the wall for Rudy, gets a giant stun. Red Hot's gonna pick up the dragon. Now they're gonna take down Rudy as well. DJ Kush dropping low. E-Thug's gonna get one as well. There's another one for Boise State. The teleport from Kapari way too late. It's a double kill.
Gonna do a lot of damage thanks to that Divine Sunderer, but now going to be caught out by other members of Boise State. There's the equalizer. Ascent godlike now, 8-1 and 3.
Yeah, great job by Goblin, kind of baiting Rudy. The one you don't attack is probably going to rip your team apart. Vayne, of course, has less health, doesn't have the Zanyas, but I do think you're right, Gleb. There does become a time of when do you maybe bait Boise State after all the resources have been used to try and kill Ascent. E-Thug's going to drop incredibly low. Going to get, once again, a huge ult from Dean to come back to life. They're going to pick up. That's where that comp made its debut. We'll see how it goes against Bethany Lutheran in a matter of moments. Doc's keys to the game: focus on a strong comp, play to our win condition, focus on what we've learned, and of course, E-Thug Smash is going to be the name of the game for Boise State. It's all brought to you by Account, whose Identity Trust Global Network delivers real-time fraud prevention, account protection, enables a personalized customer experience for more than 9,000 leading brands and payment providers. If you want to stay safe online, go check them out at Count.com, Kount.com. Moments away from hopping into game number 1 of the Upsurge Premier League, Boise State and Bethany Lutheran. The Broncos, the underdog. Bethany Lutheran, one of the top squads in Collegiate League of Legends globally. But Boise State's been known to sometimes play up to their competition's level, and this would be a great time to do that and maybe at least get one win of a very, very talented Viking squad.
Indeed, and they do have a really good composition for it, as we were discussing before we went to that quick top plays. The Kaisa has a lot of tools that you can use, has a lot of crowd control to proc that passive multiple times, so definitely a lot of focus on setting up E-Thug for success.
And I think the other thing that will play in Boise State's favor this time that was a question in the Colorado State game that we saw the highlights from is the Rams wanted to play around Venona in that top lane. Bethany Lutheran, it's still a great team, but their weakest lane is top lane by a significant margin, at least by summoner rank globally, which is all we have access to. I think that's going to make it so Goblin at least has an easier time in that top lane than maybe we saw against Colorado State, where he was getting his CS doubled and tripled very, very early in the game.
Despite that, he has been using these really good tank utility top laners and still remaining viable, still doing that right now with this Shen. So the Stand United possibly going to be very key for his team if it is used very correctly. We're now getting into the early game here. Everybody lining up, trying to find their spots. Nothing crazy, no early invades here.
No, I think the headline here is that it is actually that Brand Thresh bot lane, as we had maybe speculated it would. It's Freeze on the Lucian in the mid. Like I said, it's something he has played quite a bit of. Definitely a more outside the box mid laner, has a lot of Aurelia played as well. So very interesting to see how Boise State's new look bot lane of E-Thug and Dean is going to take on Wizardish and Hollywood on a very, very interesting bot lane matchup for them.
It is a very vulnerable lane. If Brand tries to throw out that Pillar Flame, he could very easily get caught by a Dredge line, so we'll have to watch his positioning. However, being in that carry position does do a lot of good for his team. He'll be able to get that AP going very quickly, which will be very important when you look at the multiple tanks on the side of Boise State and realize they're all going to be standing near each other.
Yeah, it is also, you mentioned the Dark Harvest brand, the more Feast or Famine brand. It is actually just the Arcane Comet, so he just wants to go force a poke, probably try and get his mana passive going as quick as possible so he's not able to go in lane. He's able to sustain as long. And we do see, of course, the top and the mid for both teams running that teleport. So whenever an objective comes out, and that first dragon going to be huge for Boise State with that Nunu, so the dredge line just misses, everybody's going to be there. It's Smash Bros. Everybody's here.
Both sides trying to find themselves an opening, but we're just doing a little dance here around those minions. A little bit of poke, though, going out onto E-Thug. One of the advantages of that brand is that he's got a lot of burst and he can use those minions to poke you with the conflagration. That's not something you can dodge.
Yeah, use the conflagration to pass the ignite to someone like E-Thug. Then you have the ability to land the Q or the empowered pillar flame. We do see Freeze. Looks like he's just going to ward out blue, so Bethany Lutheran will know where Red Hot is pathing at all times. And that is the one matchup I actually want to keep an eye on, is it feels like Freeze on that very strong ADC in Lucian in the mid lane, also with the dash to be able to escape a lot of Victor's slow-paced abilities, is how well Ascent can stay even in that lane and not need extra support from Red Hawks.
Definitely, and we also see that up in that top lane, already using the Shen to do a pretty good job of standing up to this set. One of the great advantages there is that a lot of Set's damage comes through his auto attacks, and that's something Shen can shut down with the press of a button.
Yeah, I think top lane will definitely be resigned to just a pair of wet noodles. I would be shocked if Hunter or Red Hots even get close to that lane. I think the closest they'll probably get is for first Rift Herald. Is neither, I mean, Set does benefit a little bit more from kills than a Shen would, but as we said, this is definitely probably the weaker lane for both teams, especially with Goblin just now moving up to the top lane for really only his third series ever in top lane that we've seen. I know some of the coaches for Boise State said he's played a couple of games, but here comes the biggest snowball ever. Freeze is going to try and run away. Hunter is in the bush, but Boise State's going to pursue anyway. Nice block there from the Uter, and that's going to send Boise State running away.
Or is it? It looks like they're going to try and charge back in. Does get a few snowballs down, not going to commit to the fight, though.
Yeah, Sent not quite good enough on mana to be able to participate in that fight. Red Hot's on the Nunu not going to do near as much damage as you would need to be able to kill someone like that. Hunter not even worried, just started backing and never stopped. Good news for Boise State. Red Hot really never has to go back as that Nunu, except for how well he is sustained, but you see Bethany Lutheran knows exactly where he is. The ping comes out right as he starts his golems.
Attempted stop of the back there in that mid lane just to keep Ascent from being able to catch this minion wave earlier, maybe force him to burn the teleport if he wants to get back to lane with some mana. So we'll see how that affects the summoners. He is actually sticking around for the time being just to catch the wave.
Yeah, Freeze already used the teleport to get back in the lane, so trying to make it worth it. That sense is just going to land onto Dean. He'll get stunned up. Pillar of Flame's going to do quite a bit of damage. Block the 3-star passive from Brand. He's going to dredge line in, force the flash away. Now Etha is in a spot he does not want to be in. Death Sentence not available for Hollywood, so Ethug able to get away, but that trade definitely goes in the favor of Bethany Lutheran. With Dragon spawning, it's exactly what the Vikings wanted.
Definitely, and also multiple summoners burned there. Those summoners aren't going to be available for later fights. Goblin getting engaged on a little bit. He is going to be able to keep himself alive, though, fairly safely, thanks to those tank stats on the Shed. And now the Dragon completely vulnerable to the side of Bethany Lutheran.
Yeah, nothing that Boise State can do. You can see they're paying it. Red Hot's not even close. Goblin not level 6 for the Stand United in. That is going to be a free dragon for the Vikings, playing that one perfectly. Now they're going to rotate down. Lantern in, flash. Death Sentence will miss. There's a flash stun onto Dean. He's going to get flayed back in. Not able to dredge line to safety, and it's first blood for Bethany Lutheran with a great play right off that dragon.
But here comes the Nunu. Giant Snowball finds one, not able to follow up on it. And that seems to be the story for Boise State. They get one engaged target, but they're not able to follow up and bring them down.
Yeah, it was a great job by the Vikings. I mean, you mentioned that those summoners that were burned in that previous engage, They got the flash out of Dean. They knew he was going to be kind of a sitting duck there on that Nautilus, not able to get the dredge line back into tower. A great stun by Wizardish to set up the stun from Hunter, and then that Flay just perfectly chaining the CC together onto Dean and not allowing him to get away. And I really like how the Vikings play that. Even though Boise State knew they were there with the Dragon, they were still able to get a great gank off thanks to that Thresh Lantern.
We can see Goblin here shoving his lane up. Actually a little dangerous, very low on health. Does get caught by the Showstopper, but he taunts away. Shed is trying to close the distance, does use the flash, is trying to close this, has the Haymaker, no, isn't going to use it.
Goblin barely getting away. This is going to cost him his flash. Would expect he will probably teleport back to the lane, but with the Stand United, does mean he's able to match Hanjay wherever he goes if a fight breaks out. Boise State trying to set a pick onto this bot side. You can see the pings going out. Not sure if Bethany Lutheran knows where Dean is or not. And it looks like they kind of have an idea. They're definitely playing it very, very safe. Camera's going to take us away from that as the Vikings were up to any trickery Boise State might have had.
Interesting to note, Goblin decided he was going to walk back to lane in the set. Of course, just holding that farm there kind of signals that he's looking for fights. He's looking for trades.
He has used the teleport. Freeze getting the better trades by far in the mid lane. You can see the CS favoring Bethany Lutheran in top and mid. Boise State just barely ahead in the bot side, but that kill is on Wizardish to give him the gold lead overall. It's almost 1.5K in favor of the Vikings just 8 minutes in. And Boise State right now, you got to look across the map globally and start to wonder where can they actually make a play.
At this point, you really need to find something through your jungle. With the Nunu, they have had some attempted ganks, but every time he's come in, he hasn't had the resources he's needed to follow up on the elimination. The Kaisa hasn't dealt enough damage, Ascent ran out of mana, so he needs to gank at a more opportune moment.
You see the pings already going out for Rift Herald for Hunter. He wants to pick that one up. Does have to be somewhat careful with Red Hot's on that Nunu, but Red Hot's nowhere in the area code. So looks like Hunter's just going to jump right on top of that. Meanwhile, everything else, Bethany Lutheran more than content turning this into a farm battle as every lane now ahead for the Vikings. So you see Freeze is going to make a trade there with Ascent. Finally, Ascent does come out on top, but not by much.
Both of these teams just kind of taking things very slowly, very deliberately. It's kind of like watching a chess match, only being played by 5 players on either side of the team, and things are a bit more complex.
Just a bit, and here's this lane gank you were talking about. Great depth charge going to land onto Hollywood. He'll throw down the box, still get knocked up in the air. Red Hot's trying to keep him rooted. Boise State's going to pick up one. Dean just barely able to get away. Alt's going to come out to slow Wizardish. Going to take care of it just to get him low enough. Ethug, though, gets stunned under tower. Wizardish going to pick up a double kill as Dean died to the burn, and Boise State gank goes awry. They only get 2 for 2.
I mean, 2 for 2, you still got those eliminations, but unfortunately giving 2 eliminations over to that brand, not ideal, especially when one of your eliminations went onto your Nautilus instead. Mid lane still getting bullied here. Ascent having a hard time into this Lucian, but I mean, that's Lucian for you. In that early game, he's really hard to deal with.
Yeah, he's just able to shove, able to trade out incredibly well against Victor. There's the culling that's going to come out. Ascent dropping very low. He's going to use the ult. There's the Stand United. Freeze going to get stunned under tower. Boise State pulls a bit of the Bethany Lutheran with a perfect stun. Let the tower finish him off, and Ascent picks up his first kill in the mid lane.
Big credit to Goblin there for paying close attention and saving his teammate from what almost certainly would have been his doom. It was a good stun, but we did see those auto attacks just barely get negated by that Stand United.
Yeah, the Stand United probably prevented it from being a 1-for-1, maybe even a 1-for-0. You don't know if Freeze would have been stood in that gravity well long enough to be stunned. But yeah, great play by Goblin. Big reason why Boise State, no matter who's been in the top side, has loved that Shen. Hunter now going to go for a gank, land the stun onto Dean. Dean's going to try and walk away, but right into Hollywood. There's the death sentence, and that is a dead Nautilus. Now Ethug's going to try and get away. He will. But Boise State's bot lane in shambles right now, and Bethany Lutheran has all 4 kills on that brand.
It's absolutely terrifying to see that champion starting to rise in power, especially with the amount of anti-tank ability he brings into the team. Haymaker goes on to Goblin. He's awfully low, but he is underneath his tower. That may not matter to Set, who is going to go after him. There's the Showstopper. Hanjay takes out Goblin, and there's a death sentence under the tower now.
Oh, the death sentence causes the Q from Wizardess to miss. The stun's going to be avoided. Ethug's going to be forced to use the heal. Barely survives the brand passive. Biggest snowball ever going to be used just as a distraction, but now Red Hots might have gone a bit too far. He's able to survive. Dean rotating down, but Ethug at way too low a health. He'll have to back, and Boise State barely holds on without losing another member.
Definitely, they don't have the damage to continue. As we can see, though, Ascent is starting to give as good as he's gotten. We do see Udyr on the side, maybe looking to dive. Nope, just going to take a little bit of poke, try and shove that lane in.
Yeah, he does have Shelly, so probably trying to get a couple of plates. I think Ascent would be able to defend it long enough. It's not going to matter, though, as Hanjay's going to pick up first tower. Ult is going to be used, and Free's just able to dash away. And once again, the mobility of Lucian proving very strong against those slow-moving abilities of Victor's.
It's the culling for the Plasma Storm, though. Which of those abilities has a longer cooldown? I think the Plasma Storm does, not 100% on that. But certainly is going to have the cooldown reduction, maybe to continue answering that anyway. Going to pick up some fruit there for himself, so he can just get back right to the lane.
You see Red Hot's deterred for a moment, now going to hop onto that River Scuttle, just consume it. Nothing that Bethany Lutheran can do to contest that. Dragon, your next objective spawning here in 2 minutes or so. We'll see if Boise State's able to contest. As we said, it's a 4-1-0 Shen with the Leandries 12 minutes into the match. Boise State's got to watch out for that. And the top lane for Bethany Lutheran right now, Hanjay, 114 CS, 1-0 on that set. Definitely maybe proving that we were underestimating him as the potential weakest lane for the Vikings right now, putting a ton of pressure on Boise State.
Bethany Lutheran has really been doing a great job of prioritizing these objectives. We do see the death sentence miss, but here comes the giant snowball from behind. Does find a target, but doesn't have the damage. Tries to dive in with the absolute zero, but Wizardish is going to pick up the eliminations now, as we do see the attempted on the back line here. John Haig going to pick up Ascent. Unfortunately, Boise State loses multiple members across the field. Double kill onto that brand, and Dean's the only one who walks out of that alive.
Now, Boise State maybe thought they could catch Bethany Lutheran off guard. That was not the case. A very interesting call by Goblin to use the Stand United on Ethug, who was actually in the Dragon Pit. Forced Ethug to ult just to dash into the Bethany Lutheran team to put Goblin in a better position, and then he winded up being isolated by Hunter. So a very interesting call. We talked about how that Shen is usually used to protect Ethug, but he wasn't in any real dangers. Now Hunter's going to steal Red Hots' blue buff. They're going to duel here for a little bit. This favors the Udyr. Does land a root. He's got Dean rotating over, but the rest of the bot lane for Bethany Lutheran was in short order as well, so everyone's going to disengage, and Boise State starting to fall very far behind here. Now 6.5K gold behind, and we're only 14 minutes into the game.
And really, all the eliminations just mostly came through that last fight there. If you look at the score, most of that gold is coming through little things. It's coming through the farm, it's coming through the Rift Herald, it's coming from the 2 dragons that Bethany Lutheran has picked up at this point, because Boise State has not been able to exert enough pressure to be able to take these objectives.
Yeah, I mean, tower plates have fallen. I don't think Boise State got a single one. Of course, all 5 in the top lane went to Bethany Lutheran. They got 3 or 4 in the mid lane as well, and that is a big reason why the gold lead stands where it does right now. 14 minutes in of game 1 in the Upsurge Premier League between these two teams. As we said, Bethany Lutheran, one of the top teams in League of Legends. We knew Boise State was going to be in for a very tough game, and the Broncos right now trying to find a way in. Death Charge going on to Hollywood. He'll use the box, but still get knocked up in the air. Forced to flash away. Teleport's coming in. There we go. We talked about it. Anytime a fight breaks out, everybody could join. Freeze, Hanjay are there. Goblin tried to assist. Ascent doesn't have teleport. He's trying to rotate down. Hunter's going to cut him off. Red Hots will die. Boise State will disengage. Tons of teleports blown, and Boise State finds nothing.
The good news is that they only lost 1, but you still lost 1 for nothing on the other side, and now Bethany Lutheran continuing to pressure this side of the map. They've got Set in the back line. Could try to throw Shen on top of your carry. They've got enough pressure to take this turret easily.
I think if Hanjay had waited for just a moment, he actually might have been able to make a play, but he showed himself just a bit too early. Stopped the show before the show stopper could come out. And I think that's a big reason why Boise State barely hangs on to their life. But now they're going to lose all 3 Tier 1 turrets. And Boise State The problem for them is they keep trying to make plays. I mean, the reason Red Hot's died is he tried to gank that lane. Boise State's just got to calm down here and maybe try and farm a little bit to get back in this game and shrink this gold lead.
They can't calm down too much. Dragon is up and Bethany Lutheran is on top of it. That's going to be the Cloud Drake. 3 dragons now, and we're not even at 20 minutes.
Now, this could be a Cloud Soul at like 22 minutes into the game. A very quick Elder Dragon, which if you're looking ahead, if you're a Boise State fan, maybe you find a way to win a fight around Elder, and you get the Elder Dragon buff. Cloud Soul, especially with champions like Udyr, does lose a bit of its oomph for a team. Udyr not going to be too concerned about that ultimate CDR, but he will like the movement speed on it. As Hanjay and Goblin going to be going at it. They're nice taunt, but there's no one to assist him. Haymaker didn't look like it dented Goblin too much, and now we're going to see a fight break out around this Rift Herald that Boise State was able to pick up. Hunter going to get knocked in the air. There's a Death Dance going to land onto Red Hots. Coling will come out. Depth charge going to miss. Absolute Zero just barely knocked away, and Red Hot's going to pay with his life. Now Boise State in retreat. Hunter wants to try and find a stun. The Scent can't find his, and now Boise State's got to try and peel. Hunter dropping low. Gravity Storm going to be used. Dashed in by Ethug. He's going to flash right on top of Hunter. One more auto attack. He's able to pick it up. Stand United is there, so Goblin's now in the fight. Hollywood trying to front line for the rest of Bethany. Lutheran, Wizardish, and Freeze on the outside. Hollywood now going to get caught. It's a double kill for Ethug. Goblin chasing down Wizardish. He'll change his mind, go after Freeze. Boise State sitting pretty. Ethug, though, out of mana. Dean now low on health, and so is Goblin. And now Boise State, just like that, they've got to run for the hills. Huge depth charge going to land. Freeze just barely dashes away from the second laser. Boise State trying to find huge flash from Ascent. They're able to pick up one. Wizard just has enough mana. Does not have the ult, but Boise State still has to be careful of a huge Pillar of Flame. Could knock out all 3 of them. Now that it misses, the Broncos free to go in. Depth charge going to miss. Boise State got to be very careful. Dean incredibly low on health. He'll take the Conflagrate to the face. Barely going to tick down. Rekka coming to pick up one. Ethug stands in the Pillar of Flame. Wizard is going to cut off the line of sight for now, and he's going to pick up a double kill. Boise State, what looks so good, goes so bad in a hurry. Now Hanjay is going to catch out Red Hots right next to Red Buff. Showstopper away. Red Hots will flash back for the consume. Haymaker just barely misses, and it looks like Red Hots barely going to make it out alive and salvage Boise State's play.
That is a great snowball, but remember, this set is still healthy enough that he could attempt a tower dive. It doesn't look like it. He is going to get away, so good job with that snowball. We saw in that fight definitely signs of life for what Boise State wanted to do with their composition, but they weren't able to close in on that brand, had to fight their way one by one through the other members of Bethany Lutheran's lineup.
Yeah, you see Wizardish right now, 10-1-1 on that brand. Monica Brace, Leandry's Torment, both online. We saw exactly what we talked about in the draft, the ability for Brand. He hits you with one ability, walks away, and you just burn to death from all of his items and his passive, and there's nothing you can do to really stop that damage. So they've got to find a way to get to Wizardish, but he plays it so well, just constantly kiting Boise State. Goblin setting up for something tricky there. I don't quite know what his plan is. Here's the snowball, and it's not going to land on Freeze. Now Red Hot's in an awful position. He's going to get Chilling Smited. I don't think he's going to make it away. There's the Absolute Zero. Death Sentence will cancel. And you have to wonder what Boise State was planning to do there with just Goblin and Red Hot.
I think they didn't have vision on the area. They were just going to try and cheese out something onto that Lucian, potentially using the crowd control that they had for themselves, but unfortunately not able to close that deal. Multiple members of Bethany Lutheran waiting in the wings to counter-engage and punish the attempt.
Boise State's just going to have to walk away. Baron up in 20 seconds. See if Bethany Lutheran hops right on top of it. They have nearly a 10K gold lead at 19 minutes. That sends on Ethug going to land, but there's no follow-up. And Boise State sitting on the back foot right now and looking for a play. If I'm Bethany Lutheran, I think forcing the Baron is the right call because you can just win the game off that.
Certainly, but they also have a significant gold advantage here in this mid lane. If they wanted to, they could probably siege. Boise State just uses the snowball there, so they don't have a major engage tool available for them outside of the depth charge.
Still have Heraldina in the back pocket of Red Hots. It is fading soon, but could potentially be used as maybe a last-minute distraction to slow down the side of Bethany Lutheran, who's now picked up their 5th tower of the game. Hanjay is going to hop right on top of Goblin, pull him right back in. Going to be forced to use the taunts to get away, but the slow is going to mean there's nowhere that Shen can go. The ping's going out. There's Rift Herald. And Boise State was trying to sandwich Hanjay, but he reads it enough that he should be able to get away. But there's a teleport coming in. from Goblin. Boise State wants to try and shut down this set. The showstopper going to be used to help him get away. Huge haymaker. Now he thinks he can turn the fight. It's just Red Hots and Goblin. They both have to be careful. The rest of Boise State fell back. And Hanjay could easily pick up a double kill here if Boise State does not play this perfectly. Going to find out Goblin. Hunter's here as well. Absolute Zero going to be used, but Boise State biting off way more than they could chew, and they're going to lose 2 here. Red Hot's going to try and get away. Hunter can't quite land the stun. Only bad news for Red Hots. He's going right into the team. As we see, Boise State, meanwhile, engaging on that bot lane once again. Ethug's going to walk right into Hanjay. Doesn't look like it's going to matter, though. Hollywood's going to pick up that kill. Red Hot's still trying to kite Hunter. He's not able to get away. Dean will fall as well. Ascent trying to agree to shut down Wizardish. He's not able to get there. It's an ace for Bethany Lutherian, and this should set them up for a very easy Baron.
Definitely. Boise State, we saw getting separated across the map. Their team composition relies heavily on being able to be together, using the Kai'Sa for that damage. But when they're split up with like that, when the Kai'Sa goes in on her own without any backup, your team composition just falls apart.
Yeah, Boise State, I mean, when you have your 2 tanks trying to fight a 4-0-1 set, that's never going to go over very well. It's a 22-minute Dragon Soul for the side of Bethany Lutherian as they're working on that Cloud Drake, and there's nothing Boise State could do, and you have to look. And the win condition for Boise State is getting very, very slim. It's a 13K gold lead at 22 minutes. Outside of some miraculous Consume Smite Elder Dragon steal by Red Hots in about 6 minutes from now, you have to wonder where Boise State's way back in really lies.
I think definitely they need to group up at this point. If you're split up across the map like that, yes, there is the potential of that split push coming through, but you're also more likely to win those team fights. Dean, unfortunately, is going to get caught out, burning down. Wizardish legendary now. And now the fight just continues. Brand continuing to burn through that team, using that passive, proccing it 3 times over the course of the fight. Meanwhile, Boise State's backline getting jumped on by Lucian and Udyr. That's the ace. Bethany Lutheran probably going to use this Baron to take at least an inhibitor.
Yeah, it looks like Freeze has done a really good job pushing that bot lane when Boise State was distracted. Hanjay's going to teleport in. This could easily be game for Bethany Lutheran with the Baron minions, with the Baron buff. They're going to hop right onto this Nexus turret. They're going to wrap this one up in about 23.5 minutes. You see Dean is alive. No one else really going to be able to join him. Free's going to flash over and just keep him in the base, and that is going to be the game. Bethany Lutheran with quite the dominant victory over Boise State. We'll see how the Broncos can respond. Idaho Army National Guard, who is a huge sponsor of Boise State Esports, invites you to take your impressive critical thinking skills into real time with more than 10 jobs, offering a $20,000 bonus and your degree of choice paid for. The Idaho Army National Guard is the best team out there. Reach out on Twitch at iGuard Gaming. Boise State could use a lot of help from somebody after that game, Glovely. It just felt like as soon as Wizardish got that far ahead, there was really nothing they could do to get to that brand.
We did definitely see signs of life from them, though. As I thought for a moment, during that one team fight, when they were able to take them in 1-versus-1 fights, get lots of eliminations onto that Kai'Sa to the point that she had the Kraken Slayer available, I thought that was going to turn things around.
Yeah, unfortunately for Boise State, I think their aggressiveness just really is what doomed them in the end. Couple of fights there towards the very end of the game. They're taking fights where it's not a good matchup for them, or they even just get turned on with great map awareness by Bethany Lutheran. But we'll see what Boise State can do going into game number 2. We're going to take a short break. We'll be back to the Broncos force of game 3. We'll find out on the other side of the break. It's Upsurge League game 2 right after this.
Here are a couple lessons I've learned over the years. Friendships come in all shapes and sizes. And always buckle up. Seatbelts save lives. That's a rule we can all live by.
Legendary parts for legendary wins. NationalGuard.com to begin your guard adventure.
Welcome back into the Boise State Game Pants Esports Arena. It's game number 2 in the Upsurge Premier League between Boise State and Bethany Lutheran. The Vikings making quick work of the Broncos with a 23-minute beatdown. And Boise State, they had some bright spots, Glovely. Unfortunately, they just could not find a way to shut down Wizardish in that bot lane. 10-1-1 on that brand, kiting perfectly. And Boise State could just never find a way to get there.
Yeah, in order to get to that brand, they had to go through multiple members in that backline, and unfortunately, a lot of situations where they split themselves up and not able to take advantage of the fact that they can proc that Kai'Sa passive over and over and over again. As a result, Kai'Sa not able to get ahead, not able to get that brand in the backline, who's able to survive and burn down the whole team with that crazy AoE damage we were talking about.
Yeah, I think the other issue for Boise State that kept cropping up is we would see Goblin time and time again use the Stand United onto Ethug, which is usually the right play, but Ethug was nowhere close in the fight, and it would force Ethug to try and reposition to allow Goblin to hit a 3 or 4 man taunt, as opposed to maybe using the Stand United on Red Hots or on Dean, not only to keep them alive, but be in the middle of the fight, and that maybe is just something where Bethany Lutheran, instead of fighting back to front, like we see a lot of teams, just kind of said, we're going to mow down Boise State's front line, and then Ascent and Ethug aren't going to have anyone to protect them. So we see here Boise State's division, a very, very talented division of some of the top collegiate teams as we've seen in Bethany and Lutheran. The Vikings ranked number 6 in the latest coaches poll of EFUs in the League of Legends, and then some very talented amateur teams as well that Boise State has played up against. So definitely not a very easy group at all for the Broncos, trying to make work of it as we head into game number 2. We'll see if they have anything up their sleeve. I mean, Kindred was on the table if Boise State maybe wanted to use Ethug back in that jungle role. So I'll be curious to see maybe when Boise State pulls the trigger to switch back, or if they're committing to Ethug in the bot lane and they just want to use these games against very talented teams as a practice for what's coming ahead in things like CLoL and the rest of the Upsurge League.
I do think one thing to consider is that they did have a lot of very good lanes. The Shen lasted for a very long time in that top lane. Ascent actually got ahead of the Lucian thanks to that intervention from Goblin. So once you get ahead in that mid lane, maybe you stave off whatever you're running into. Just try and find little advantages where you can. We're now into the picks and bans phase here. Samira and Irelia taken off the table. Not a big surprise there. Hecarim taken away on the other side, followed by the Twitch.
Yeah, everything same as it was in game number 1. I don't know if the brand justifies a ban. Boise State says it's the set, actually, that justifies a ban over last time. So we'll see what Hanjay has up his sleeve, and we'll see what the final ban is for Bethany Lutheran. It's going to be that Rumble. Pretty much expected, but the way the Vikings played, maybe could have even let it through. But right now, they want to make sure that Boise State really has an easy way back into it. And Boise State's going to be the one who pick up the Udyr, which is interesting because we've seen Ethug play it, but it definitely would be a jungle that I think would fit under Red Hot's sort of control, be the tank tools we've seen him do in the jungle.
Well, certainly Udyr does have a very viable tank build. You usually go with the Phoenix stance and, trying to make yourself as tanky as possible. So it is a very good champion. Has a great clear speed, as we saw in that last game, out-clearing the Nunu very, very easily. On the other side, Skarner. Okay, this is a bit of a surprise. So another champion on that rework pool, and my personal pick. Sorry. I know you love your Shyvana, but I wanted the Skarner rework just to get rid of that darn passive into something more interesting. And Kai'Sa is going to be the follow-up.
Yeah, great pick. Kai'Sa incredibly strong right now. We have seen Ethug on the Vayne would be probably my guess of what he would pull out here. You still have the Jhin available, but with how aggressive Ethug likes to be, I think the 4-shot mechanic of Jhin probably would counteract that. So I would have guessed a Vayne for Boise State somewhere along the lines, but it's actually going to be Kog'Maw. Last time Ethug was on Kog'Maw, it was in the jungle. It was interesting. I think is the best way to put it, Glove.
Okay, well, it does look like Boise State is starting to build a sort of hyper carry composition. They have the Lulu there, that wild growth, and the shield from the help picks going to keep Kog'Maw very safe and have some additional attack speed shielding. Thresh going to be the answer on the other side. I'm not sure I like this Kog'Maw, especially this early in the draft. He is a champion that is very vulnerable if he is not well protected. And even though you have some tools to protect him already with the Udyr stun, with the Lulu, what are you going to use on the rest of your team? How are you going to stop a Skarner from walking up, grabbing a hold of your Kog'Maw, and dragging him out from the middle of that protection?
Yeah, I was banking on Bethany Lutheran to just ban Shen right away and get that off the table. They've actually banned away the Ornn. Would not shock me if Shen is next, but I agree with you. If this was Boise State's comp, you could have easily put in the Shen here instead of the Kog'Maw, and I don't think Kog'Maw is something that Bethany Lutheran would have banned away. It feels like something you could have picked maybe later in the draft. There's that Lucian ban away for Boise State, so they don't want to see that in the mid lane. They know they don't have to deal about the brand this time, as it's already Kai'Sa Thresh locked in, so I'll be really curious. Maybe this is where Camille comes in, and there's that Gnar. So Bethany Lutheran letting the Shen through, very interesting, because for any Protect the Kog'Maw comp, the ability to stand united right on top of that Kog'Maw, very, very crucial.
It's possible they just felt very confident in whoever they have for their choice in that top laner. There are some good top laners still available. We were talking about that Camille earlier, still on the board. Boise State doesn't ban it out, instead favoring to ban out that Twisted Fate, who has been a very strong mid laner in the recent meta because of his ability to roam very quickly from lane to lane.
Yeah, you don't want to have anyone sneaking up behind this Kog'Maw who is going to waddle the best he can away from all of these potential threats. I'm assuming Shen probably on the table for Boise State. We'll see who the mid laner is going to be. I mean, we've seen them run true, just pure funnel comps, but I would have to think they'll put Ascent on something that has the ability to carry as well. There's the Shen actually taken from Bethany Lutheran, so they'll go the route of not banning it and choosing it to play it themselves.
And that is a good choice. Certainly, we can see the exact same thing that happened with the Kai'Sa. It also pairs well with the Skarner. Azir going to be picked up on the other side. We've seen Ascent play this a few times, but not very recently.
Yeah, Azir, one of those champions that felt like the item rework definitely did not do him kindly. I know there's been some buffs to try and get him back to his previous state before the items were all rejumbled, so we'll see how Ascent does on Azir's first appearance in this new season. And now for the top lane for Boise State, they're going to go with the Gragas, probably the tankiest thing they can find. The Explosive Cast going to do about as much as he can to try and keep people off of Etha.
The good news is that that does give him two different options in order to stop that Stand United from following all the way through. And also Gragas, I think, just has a lot of sustain. So even if the Shen tries to pressure you early, you can still stay in that lane for a very long time. Emperor's Divide and Explosive Cask also great for pushing targets off your backline. Yone going to be the pickup on the backside. I am very, very, very worried about this Kog'Maw.
Yeah, Ethug's going to have to play this one incredibly well to stay away from all of the threats that Bethany Lutheran has. You mentioned the Skarner. You always have to be aware of the death sentence. If the Yone ult is maybe used as a way to get the Shen into the backline right on top of him, definitely a lot of dive for Bethany Lutheran. They want to shut down this Kog'Maw because outside of Kog'Maw, Azir has potential. But I think Boise State has clearly put a lot of their eggs in the Ethug basket right now.
That's definitely the case. I wouldn't be surprised if we see Lulu pick up an Ardent Sensor for that extra attack speed. It works well on the Azir too, so it's still a good option there.
Well, now that we've got that in the books, I mean, what do you expect for Boise State? I mean, they, like we said, they had some flashes in game one, but for the main part, Bethany Lutheran kind of dominates from start to finish. What are you expecting here before game two about what Boise State can do to have a chance to maybe force us to a game three?
If Boise State wants to take us to a game three, they've got to play this bottom lane flawless, and it is a dangerous bottom lane to play into. Kai'Sa Thresh. Thresh, of course, setting up that Kai'Sa passive with two of his abilities, as well as being really great at engaging onto key targets. Kog'Maw, not exactly the safest, not exactly the quickest. If he burns that flash early, we're going to have a really dangerous laning phase.
Yeah, I'll be curious how much pressure they want to put down there. Of course, the first blood in game one, right after Bethany Lutheran picked up the Dragon, they just lantern in Hunter, who was on the Udyr in game one, and just get a great pick onto Dean, whose flash had already been used in an earlier exchange. So, a lot of, like you said, a lot of pressure on Boise State's bot lane to play. about as flawlessly as they can. I'll be curious to see what Red Hots wants to do on this Udyr, where he wants to focus his ganks. And I think the other thing that we have to keep in mind is we've talked about from time to time, Shen has a sneaky amount of damage. Goblin is not going to have the easiest of time in that top lane, making sure that Shen just doesn't become unkillable in the late game.
Definitely. I mean, eventually Shen is, of course, going to scale up. You could say the same thing about the Gragas as well. Unless you're intending to run an AP build, then his damage very, very high, something you have to worry about, him throwing barrels at you from a distance. So that could be an option to try and pressure that Shen earlier on in the game before he's able to build up any real magic resist.
So we take a look here at the Upsurge Premier League in the Baron Division. Boise State, unfortunately, has not had the easiest time so far. Bethany Lutherian, the Vikings, who, as we mentioned, one of the top teams in collegiate League of Legends esports, have been struggling as well against some of the amateur teams. As you can see there, the Vikings are 1-2 with their B squad also at 0-2 as well. So both teams trying to look to get back on the right footing and trying to be in the upper half of this division, but you can see it's all dominated by these amateur teams, which is a very interesting choice to have League of Legends, both collegiate and amateur teams mixing in the same division, and right now the amateur teams proving to be a bit more successful based on the standings. We'll see if Boise State can find their first victory in Upsurge. We knew this was going to be a tough group. I think even some in Boise State saying this is the group of death. If, you know, there's a lot of like soccer and other things like that where you have these group drafts, always have that one really, really hard group. This appears to be the case. So for Red Hots, Ethug, Ascent, Goblin, and Dean, it has not been the easiest time so far 4 weeks in.
Hey, as far as I'm concerned, if you're up against better players, it means you're learning more, even if you do end up taking defeats. I mean, just in that previous game, we looked at Boise State's composition. We saw how they played it. We saw a lot of very crucial flaws that they were making in terms of their teamwork and their shot calling. And hopefully they'll fix those things going into Game 2 now with this Juggermaw-style composition around that Kog'Maw. Terrifying hyper carry if you can keep him alive.
Yeah, if you can keep him alive. I mean, Kog'Maw not one of those champions that I think goes hand in hand with Ethug's style of flashing in and trying to get on the back line and do as much damage as possible. I think the Vayne might have been a better pick, but we get Doc's keys to the game. Focus on a strong comp, play to our win condition, which of course, as we've learned, is keep that Kog'Maw alive and get him fed. Focus on what we've learned from game number 1 and E-Thug Smash. When anytime you have a protect the Kog'Maw comp, the 80 carry is going to pop off, and for Boise State, they want that to be E-Thug. Doc's keys are brought to you by Count, whose Identity Trust Global Network delivers real-time fraud prevention, account protection, enables a personalized customer experience from the 9,000 leading brands and payment providers. If you want more information on staying safe online, go check them out at count.com, KOUNT.com. And I'm very curious for Boise State how this is going to work out. Everything pretty standard on the side of Bethany Lutherian this time. Same as for Boise State as well. And I'll be curious how often this Kog'Maw can stay alive. Wait a second. Are you seeing what I'm seeing for this Kog'Maw, Lovely?
I am seeing what you're seeing. I'm not entirely sure I believe it. I think that the champions are not currently in their positions.
Do you see the summoner spell still, though?
Yeah, that's going to be Red Hots most likely in that jungle with the Udyr.
I'm talking about the Ghost Cleanse.
The Ghost Cleanse. I think the Ghost Cleanse is actually a really good call. Certainly you don't have the flash, but the Cleanse is going to be really important for getting out of things like the Death Sentence. It's going to be another layer of protection against the Skarner, so he doesn't have to worry about building that Quicksilver Sash. Ghost, of course, will allow him to quickly reposition himself in these fights to take the most advantage, and of course to chase down targets. Doing a little dance session. You know you're there. We're not coming out. We're not gonna take that risk, right, guys? We're not. This is fine.
Oh.
There's the Death Sentence. Here we go. Guardian, of course, gonna stave off some of that damage, but just a little poke damage as far as the early game goes.
Nothing too crazy. Yeah, we'll keep an eye on how that Ghost Cleanse Kog'Maw goes. I know Ethug definitely has an interesting choice of summoner spells. He usually likes to forego Flash in the jungle, and with the Ignite Smite, we saw a lot of the time. So the Cleanse Ghost Kog'Maw going to be very interesting. Everything else pretty standard across the board. Once again, everybody has teleport, so we can see a huge fight break out at any moment, and all 5 players could be there relatively quickly. We'll see how Boise State wants to do. I'll keep an eye on this top lane as well. Hanjay not on the set, but I think Goblin's still got to be careful because Shen can definitely sneak up on you on the amount of damage he can do from time to time.
There is a good taunt onto Goblin. He is going to be able to walk away, but not without taking quite a bit of damage. Meanwhile, Ascent bullying this Yone here in the mid lane. One of those big advantages is just that range versus melee matchup.
I like how Ascent has played these early moments. I think another key for Boise State is to find a lane that they can rely on just to get ahead in CS. Last time, Bethany Lutheran very far ahead in the mid and top lane, and then bot lane slowly rotated over to Wizardish around the 10-minute mark once he hit that 4-0 mark. So I think it'll be very paramount for someone like Ascent, who's ahead right now, to be able to maybe carry Boise State in the mid lane just by out-farming his opponent.
Well, if you want to talk about farm, you can keep an eye on the jungle there. Already Udyr farming his opponent, but also in the top lane, Goblin getting bullied a little bit there with that Q from the Shen and the Grasp, doing so much damage in the early stages of the game.
Yeah, now Goblin has chugged through all of his health potions, so has the Shen. So Goblin has got to be careful. Of course, Gragas does have some of that self-healing in his kit with the passive, so we'll allow Goblin to sustain just a little bit. Red Hot's looking for something, only going to find a ward, not even going to be able to get the last hit on it either. So Boise State not even able to get a ward for their problems, and now you can see Hollywood setting up for a death sentence over the wall, lands on it perfectly, flays him right into Hunter. Red Hot's going to be taken down here. That's first blood for Bethany Lutheran.
The good news is that it went over to Hollywood there instead of another more fed member, so giving that to the Thresh is important. That extra gold is going to go to your support instead of someone who deals actual damage.
Still something that Boise State's got to watch out for. Freeze going to put quite a bit of damage onto Ascent and then retreat right before he gets to tower range. There's another death sentence right onto Dean. Flay him back into his team. Wizard just taking some poke from Etha. Going to outrange it. Boise State definitely coming out more ahead in these trades than we saw last time. Not having a stun on Wizard just like he had on the brand. A huge reason why Boise State's able to get a little bit more poke when they do engage. Or even get engaged upon, as we just saw.
And he's doing a great job of playing around these minions, using them to ward off the threat of that death sentence and those flays. Sometimes just being able to put a minion or a buddy between you and your target can make all the difference in a fight.
So far, Hunter has not prioritized his bot lane as much as maybe I would have expected. Of course, with Skarner just trying to hit level 6, so he's able to have access to that ultimate. Dragon spawning soon. I don't think either team, not with the Nunu on the table, is going to be too worried about it. Ascent still doing a really nice job in this mid lane, poking Freeze down. Not quite able to get the kill. Freeze just going to teleport back after he gets a little bit of chip damage. And mana now for a second be an issue. He's going to dash right in. No ult available for either one. And Ascent's got to be careful that he watches his mana, as Freeze doesn't have to worry about that just quite yet. Red Hot's now rotating in. Hunter back in base, so Freeze has got to be able to get away by himself. Does have the flash and the teleport. Boise State right now not going to have an assistance from Goblin. Hanjay getting pinged, and it looks like that's where Freeze is rotating up, and Boise State not able to find a quick pick in the mid lane.
Goblin up here is still trying to sustain himself, but that Grasp is doing a lot of work. Everyone loves that percent health damage that you get on every one of those hits. In the meantime, though, looking across the rest of the map, gold lead is over to Bethany, but it's not a particularly large one. Bethany Lutheran going to hold on to that. Unfortunately, now gaining the farm lead in all lanes except for that mid lane where Ascent is still doing very dominant, but he's getting dove under the tower. Freeze picks up an elimination onto Ascent.
Yeah, great job by Freeze. He backed a low health, teleports right back in, and Ascent not able to retreat to get his items. And you makes great work of him under the tower and the ability for Yone to get in, get the kill, and get right back out and not have to worry about that tower doing a ton of damage. Explosive cast, not able to knock Hanjay into tower range, unfortunately, for Goblin. The body slam follow-up didn't do enough damage, so no ult now online for Goblin. He's now going to have only one way to stop the Stand United from Hanjay if it comes out.
That was a little bit unfortunate. Very close to being able to land that explosive cast in just the right way to land him underneath the tower. Unfortunately, caught on the ledge of the map. That happens if your target is just a little too close.
I do like for Boise State the fact that the farm in all of the lanes a lot closer than last time. Ascent even in the lead, though. He's going to get knocked up here. Freeze going to retreat to his turret. Hollywood coming in, as well as Hunter. Ascent's got to be careful. Does not have the flash. Going to get flayed back in. There's the ult. Hollywood's going to pick up another kill, but it's the third kill of the game for Bethany Lutheran, and Ascent now going to be forced back to base once again.
They do end up using that penetrating stinger, though, in that mid lane ultimate from the Skarner, so that's going to be a cooldown that's not going to be available for a while. Just using to make sure that they can secure that elimination onto his scent and continue putting him further behind, because they knew he was the one lane that was currently in the lead. Meanwhile, though, Ethug relatively untouched, even if he's not super high up in farm.
Dean taking a ton of damage. Lantern going to go out just to make sure Wizard just doesn't get caught in a polymorph. And we do have the Dragon picked up by Bethany Lutheran as well right before. So second game in a row, Bethany Lutheran has used a Dragon kill, rotated that right over into a kill, this time onto Ascent, who's now 0-2. I think the other thing here is the further Ascent gets behind, this puts just more and more pressure on Boise State to keep Ethug alive. And I think that's the other reason why Bethany Lutheran is focusing him down, knowing if we can make sure that this Azir's not a threat, all we have to do is kill Kog'Maw, and Boise State's going to run out of damage very quickly. So we see Ascent taking chunks of damage now. Freeze just going to dash back. He'll take a tower shot, but he does not care. He's now going to flash in. There's the Alt Streamer Shuffle going to be used. Freeze now has to be careful. Goblin and Red Hot's rotating down. The explosive cast from downtown. And Boise State barely keeps Ascent alive.
Great explosive cast there, but not even necessarily needed. They had plenty of opportunities, so maybe a bit of a waste of an ultimate in my opinion. Meanwhile, Dean finds out a target in the jungle. Hollywood forced to flash and drops the box as well, so there's an ultimate and a flash burned in exchange.
Does look like the Ghost was popped on Ethug. He's not going to have access to that for a little bit, but as we talked about in previous broadcasts, Ghost does have a slightly shorter cooldown than Flash, so it should be up before Hollywood's, but Hollywood does have the Hex Flash, so he's going to still be very dangerous in this lane. As Ethug's now hit level 6, the ult's going to come online, and the spam from Kog'Maw going to come out and try and do as much chip damage as he can. Goblin right now getting poked down by Hanjay. Taunt is going to land. See if Goblin's able to get away. Red Hot's now going to get that penetrating steer with the Lantern. What a play from Hunter. There's nothing Red Hot's could do, and that is why Skarner Thresh, one of the most underrated comps, because you could do stuff like that.
It kind of reminds me of the times when we'd see the Ballista combo with the Blitzcrank and the Callista, where you'd grab someone with a Blitzcrank and then pull them back with the Callista ult. Then, of course, you know, just dump your Blitzcrank on them, and there you go, crowd control in the middle of your team.
I mean, there's also been that with Thresh and Blitzcrank as well. You play the more AD version of Thresh, you use the Lantern, and now we're going to see ult in from Wizardish. Wild Growth forced to be used on Dean to keep himself alive. Stand United coming in from Hanjay. Now Boise State's trying to disengage. There's a teleport. Hunter going to join the fight as well. Everybody's down in the bot lane. Goblin teleported in half-life. Immediately has to flash away. Ethug now stuck by himself in a 1v4. Boise State gets caught. A great play by Hanjay to rotate down, and the Broncos going to lose 2 down in the bot lane.
Speaking of rotating, Ascend is forced to back away. Almost gets caught out by this Yona here in the mid lane. Attempted knockup is getting some poke damage back, but not doing a whole lot of damage. Hard to close in. There's the Udyr, but not able to close in. And that's kind of been the story of the game for Boise State here.
Yeah, I was shocked that the rest of Bethany Lutheran didn't rotate up, and maybe Freeze could have baited Boise State down. But yeah, that has been the story of really game 1 and game 2 is Boise State starts out as the aggressor, and then Bethany Lutheran just has the perfect answers. Ascent's not going to take a ton of damage. Here we go. Repeat with the Emperor's Divide back into the turret, but this time Freeze with the E online, able to teleport back in. Looks like Rift Trail's going to be summoned. Ascent has enough of that. He's just going to walk away and give him his first tower.
It's unfortunate to lose your tower like this, especially when the Azir was doing so well early on, but having that pressure on the mid lane has put him far behind at this point. 0-2-1 on this Azir. Not that far behind in terms of CS, thankfully, but good explosive cast puts Yone underneath the tower. Ults over the wall. He's going to get away.
Hunter wants to run down Ethug. Nice polymorph going to come out from the Dean. There's the penetrating stinger. Ethug just going to get obliterated. Does pick up the kill, but he'll trade his life 1 for 1, and there's nothing Dean's going to be able to do to get away from this. Damage does come out from the Kog'Maw passive. Red Hot's rotating down. Great flash from Dean. Actually does get away. And Boise State able to just trade 1 for 1.
Little bit of extra credit there to Ethug, using that passive from the Kog'Maw to slow both targets, making it a little bit easier for Dean to get in position to flash safely over that wall there.
Again, though, for Boise State, unfortunately not able to find a clean fight win, just going 1 for 1. Red Hot's going to stun Wizardish under the tower, but there's more than enough minions in his way, and Red Hot has to be careful that he just doesn't get poked out under tower now. He's going to go right back in. The bear stance will land at the last moment. Now Ethug is there as well. Wizard is forced to run. Does have Hunter near Dragon. Wizardish should be able to get away. No! Even with the flash, Ethug able to pick him off. So Boise State finally gets that clean fight win. And Ethug picks up one more, and that's exactly what the Broncos wanted.
It's all a question of whether or not you can get in range before he's able to flash away. And that was a flash expended as well. So big play there for Ethug with the shutdown gold, forcing out that flash on that bottom lane. And that's what the Ghost is for, to move you into position and do so on a much shorter cooldown.
See Ascent just dashing away there, knows that unfortunately with all of that pressure, nothing he can do is now Hollywood's going to get jumped on. Bach's going to come down. They're going to pull Hunter off the Dragon. Wild Growth is going to land on to Ethug. Going to teleport's coming right near the bot lane. Hollywood dropping low, but he'll get a stand united from Shen. Can Boise State finish him off before Shen joins the fight? The answer is no. Ethug now going to get caught out. Hanjay's going to pick up one. Ascent's going to try and run away, but Boise State's going to lose a chance to steal the Dragon. Red Hot's still over the wall. We'll see if he can blast cone. Doesn't look like he's able to do it. Boise State's just going to have to walk away. Great stand united by Hanjay, able to pick up a kill onto Ethug, and Boise State's going to surrender that Dragon, and it's another Cloud Soul on the map this time. And we'll see if Bethany Lutherian can pick this one up as well.
And that is the danger of this Kog'Maw. If you're not able to get through the front line of Bethany Lutherian, it's hard to pick up those eliminations. Shen, a very tanky champion. Thankfully, though, Kraken Slayer has just been completed with that back using the shutdown gold he got from the Kaisa, so he's going to have an easier time getting through these tanks on every third auto.
The only problem for Boise State is the Cloud Soul is lackluster for some of the Broncos, especially with Kog'Maw and Udyr. Not the longest ult cooldowns to begin with, so they're not going to be too worried about that ultimate CD. Udyr, of course, if Boise State picks up the Soul, probably love the movement speed, but I'm sure if you're Bethany Lutherian, Stand United, Penetrating Stinger, there's just so many ultimates you want that Cloud Soul for, especially the Skarner.
Definitely, although on the other hand, Boise State does have that explosive casket. It has been proving very useful to them throughout this game. Currently, only one elimination so far, but it has been setting up kills for other teammates. We do see the engage on the top lane, but there's an engage on the bottom side as well. Just gonna poke out. Nobody goes down, but an ultimate does come out from the Yone, but he's caught by 3. Ethug going to pick up Freeze. Currently 3-3-0 now, starting to turn things around in this bottom lane.
Yeah, that's why they drafted the Lulu, to keep Ethug alive. We saw the Wild Growth come out just barely, allowing Freeze to not pick up an elimination. Now Hollywood going to try and cut off Goblin. He'll get body slammed in between the turrets, and Boise State's going to pick up their first turret of the game for them and even things out in turrets, so the Broncos are still down 3K gold. It's definitely a better start than we saw in game 1 for Boise State.
More importantly, they do have that key member of theirs online. Even if it's just that mythic item, Kog'Maw starting to get ahead. They're going to hand over that blue buff, so they'll make sure that he has the mana to keep spamming his ultimate and his W as well.
Doesn't look like they'll trade blue buff for blue buff, though, as Hunter has given that one over to Wizardish. So Boise State will not have 2 blue buffs on their side. Red Hots will find that out very soon as he goes into his jungle that has been warded up very well by the side of Bethany Lutherian, with quite a bit more vision than Boise State in those early canvases of the jungle. And Boise State's now got to make sure they are not reckless in their own jungle.
Red Hot's nearly finding out a target there in the jungle. Good back, though, is able to get him out. Vision ward spotted out. Dean cleared that. And right now, everyone's just kind of resetting. We do see a teleport actually down to that bottom lane, though. Yone going underneath the tower to try and fight Goblin is going to back away.
Yeah, interesting choice by Boise State, using the teleport to make sure that Freeze is not able to pick up that turret for free. You have to guess with Dragon being the next major objective. There is a second Rift Herald, but we haven't seen Bethany Lutherian prioritize that too much. As here comes the rotation down. Sense the first one there. Hunter's right behind him in short order. Boise State's still running away as the explosive cast will just knock Freeze back. Boise State picks up the top tower in exchange for their bot tower. Hunter wants to land an ult onto Goblin. He's going to do just that. There's not much Gragas can do. Bach's going to come down as well as the Flay, and he cannot get away. Boise State, unfortunately, gets collapsed on by the Vikings, and Bethany Lutherian's going to pick up one more.
Meanwhile, on the other side of the map, Boise State does manage to pick up a turret. They're going to try and chase down this Shen, who is able to back away underneath the turret. Ghost comes out as Kog'Maw continues to follow. Ethug chasing a tower deep. Meanwhile, on the bottom side of the map, Ascent going to use the Emperor's Divide, but it's not enough to get him out. Kog'Maw, my goodness, chasing 2 towers deep. to try and get that kill. He does pick up the Shen, but at what cost? A Rift Herald is going to take his tower on the other side of the map.
Now, Rift Herald's going to take the tower. It's going to take the mid inhibitor. Kog'Maw is going to try and back. It looks like he should actually be able to get it off. And Boise State's going to give up quite a bit just for one Shen, 2 in his own base. But you know what? As long as Ethug put worth in all chat, I got to agree with him.
I don't think I've ever thought I would see the day when I saw a Kog'Maw so aggressive. He dives 2 towers deep to chase a Shen of all things. But here we are. This is League of Legends.
I mean, I don't think that Ethug knows how to click backwards. It is all go, no matter what champion he plays, Glovely. So I am not shocked. I'll agree with you, it's the first time I've seen it, but I'm not shocked that Ethug... I'm surprised Ethug didn't dive him on the laser, honestly.
So at what point do we start seeing AD carry Mundo then? Because then at least, you know, Mundo can go where he pleases.
I think Ethug is... if they did the Mundo rework, which I know is in the works, they should just put a picture of Ethug there. Because it's truly Ethug who goes where he pleases. As Boise State's going to take an engage, Distance is going to land, Cleanse is going to be used, Hunter sees an opportunity. There is the ultimate plus the Lantern, and Ethug's going to be the first one taken down. Emperor's Divide going to try and create space for Boise State, flash over, Death Sentence lands onto Ascent as well. He'll try and flash to safety, but it's not enough. The 2 carries for Boise State are down, and the Broncos can do nothing to contest this Dragon.
And that was the danger of that Skarner. As soon as that Death Sentence landed, he had to commit the Cleanse to stay alive, and that left him open to more crowd control, to a taunt from Shen, or to, of course, the penetrating Stinger from that Skarner, using the Lantern to pull him back into their team. And while they did use that Wild Growth to save him for a moment, that's still a very squishy Kog'Maw surrounded by all 5 members of Bethany Lutheran.
Red Hot's not knowing he's standing on a ward, was trying for a cheeky pick. Dean's going to come behind him, but I don't think he has enough damage as the 2 tanks going to duel it out in the jungle there. Red Hot's forced to flash away. Death Sentence max range is going to land. It wasn't going to matter. Wizardish was on the other side. Ethug trying to pick up a kill onto Hunter. Can't quite find it. A last-second shield. Hanje's under the turret. Probably didn't take the best way. Going to force to flash away to safety. And Bethany Lutheran, 2 members on flashing health bars, barely going to be able to survive. They'll take down the turret as well. Goblin now going to get dived by Freeze, but he'll dash back. And Boise State right now starting to lose any sort of momentum they had in this game.
They almost had him this close, and then that Spirit's Refuge blocked that last auto attack that would have taken him out. Very unfortunate for Boise State. They do end up losing quite a bit off of this now. 14 eliminations to 5 on Boise State, and more importantly, 6 towers and 3 dragons to 2 towers and no dragons.
The objectives have been all on the side of Bethany Lutheran in this series. Boise State, though, did get some towers in this game, and it has been a much closer game. You can see where Boise State can find a way in. It's all going to rely around Ethug getting an insane pick onto somebody, and the rest of Boise State keeping him alive. But Cleanse, 60% of the way off cooldown. He has to just play, like we talked about this in the draft level, he has to play perfectly around those death sentences. Otherwise, as soon as he cleanses the death sentence, you can immediately see Hunter's eyes light up, and he is trying to get to that Kog'Maw as soon as possible. As the death sentence is going to miss, this could be an opportunity for Boise State, but Red Hot's going to back off, and everyone's just going to disengage.
The important thing for these fights is that they need to have their tanks in the front line. They got to have that Udyr and that Gragas there to protect the Kog'Maw. I mean, that's the name of the classic composition, protect the Kog'Maw. And they haven't been able to do that yet. Their positioning has been off. The Kog'Maw has been running out in front of the team, getting caught by death sentences. We do see a teleport being used just to secure the Baron. I don't think Boise State's going to bother contesting this one. Baron to Bethany Lutheran.
That was great play by the Vikings. Boise State just disengages, and the Vikings take complete advantage of that, and they'll pick up the crucial Baron here. For the next 3 minutes, this is going to make Hanje even more harder to stop for Boise State, as Red Hot is at least able to defend the ward for now. And it'll go down. All that for nothing. Death Sentence is going to miss, so Dean can get a ward in return, and 30 gold will change hands between the teams.
Speaking of things changing hands between the teams, it looks like a turret is going to end up going over there. But we do see a set here in this mid lane trying to deal with the Yone. Gets knocked up. Health bar deleted, but he is going straight back into an Udyr. I don't think it's going to matter, though. Udyr's not tanky enough. They use the Wild Growth. Meanwhile, Goblin finds 3 friends who aren't very friendly to him. They are going to take him down. Now it's just Ethug and Dean against the world, but if there's anyone you want to try and handle the world, it is these two with the shields and the Kog'Maw.
Yeah, they do have Red Hots as well, who did actually manage to stay alive. The Wild Growth was used to keep Red Hots alive, so Ethug's not going to have that defensive option. Red Hot's going to get ulted in. The Lantern plus Penetrating Stinger combo from Bethany Lutheran has been absolutely deadly this game. They pulled it off so incredibly well. Death Sentence did land with a nice cleanse from Ethug, but I don't think it's going to matter. Boise State's now down to just one Nexus turret. Ascent's back alive, trying to do what he can. So is Ethug. Freeze and jump right in on top of him, then dash back away. We'll see if Boise State has at least survived the push for now, and it looks like they might have just barely had enough of respawn to keep their base alive, but at what cost?
Definitely. We're at the point where Kog'Maw doesn't have access to the Hurricane yet. He is currently using that Rage Blade now. And has bought a Quicksilver Sash, so he does have an answer if he gets caught out by a Death Sentence and then later caught in the Stinger. So that might have been why they decided to grab the Udyr instead, to just block off a little bit of the front line for Boise State and put themselves that much farther ahead of this Udyr.
Dragon spawning soon. We'll see if Boise State wants to contest it. Would it be a Cloud Soul for Bethany Lutheran? We've talked about how much guys like Hunter would just love that, especially Hanjay. If he can get a good stand united, he'd have the movement speed to maybe land a huge taunt onto Ethug. Cleanse isn't going to be up for this fight, and it looks like Boise State backing. We'll see if the intent here is to take one last fight, because an ace will all but do it for Boise State.
Definitely, and you do need to pick your fights very wisely if you are Boise State. Only one tower between Bethany Lutheran and their Nexus, so you have to pay very close attention. Also the potential for that backdoor. I don't think Bethany Lutheran will need it though. Currently going to take up their fourth dragon of the game and the soul, Cloud Soul, over to Bethany Lutheran, and they will love that for all of their champions.
Yeah, a lot of the champions going to love the ult reductions. Skarner in particular going to love the movement speed, but he's already been getting lanterns with the Penetrating Stinger as well, so it really doesn't matter how fast he's moving. It's been a great job by Hollywood setting him up with the Lantern to make sure whoever he targets with that ult has a very low chance of survival. Looks like Bethany Lutheran going to go for the guaranteed win strat here. Going to just try and push down all three lanes. Goblin going to flash right on top of him. Here's last ditch fight for Boise State. Hunter going to jump in on the back line and he's Penetrating Stinger onto his set, but he's going to be taken down. A huge knockup comes out, and there goes Boise State. It's a double kill for Freeze. It's a double kill for Wizardish. Hanjay picks up the final one. It's an ace for Bethany Lutheran, and they're going to pick up the game and the series here, 2-0.
Ultimately just not able to protect that big carry, letting themselves get caught out multiple times. That terrifying combination.
Bethany Lutheran is victorious. The Vikings picking up 2 wins in the series. Boise State having flashes of brilliance, but just not able to chain enough of them together. Then again, this is only the 3rd time that this new look comp has appeared on the stream, so anything to improve it going forward is definitely something Boise State has in mind. Is Upsurge isn't going to get easier, and LoL definitely something Boise State has their eyes on as well, trying to defend their Mountain West title. But a huge congratulations tonight to Bethany Lutheran in Upsurge. Don't forget, the beatdown at Boise State is coming your way. It's been held all throughout February. Join Boise State's premier fighting games in Tekken 7, Dragon Ball FighterZ, and Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. Test your skills against the Idaho fighting game community. Open brackets will be held online with an in-person final hosted at Boise State University. You can register at smash.gg. The beatdown Boise State. Going to be a ton of fun. You can see Tekken 7 coming up this weekend, as well as Dragon Ball FighterZ and Super Smash Bros. Later in this month. And unfortunately, Glovely, I think the beatdown might be a good way to frame what we just saw from Bethany Lutheran and Boise State, as the Vikings made sure that they were able to pillage the village of Boise State.
Definitely. I think in particular that combination there between the Skarner and the Thresh that we saw multiple times, being able to not just get in and grab a hold of a target, but then to very quickly drag that target out of the middle of the team. Absolutely brilliant, very inspired. Hopefully I won't see it happening in my solo queue games. This seems like something you have to coordinate a little bit more to pull off.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those where like you see it and you're like, hey, let's try it with my friend, and then it never goes as well as you make these guys make it seem, and they are top players for a reason. Well, Boise State's record in Upsurge moving to 0-4. Definitely a very hard group for Boise State, but like we said, there were flashes. You could see maybe why Boise State opted for this change in comp, and it definitely feels like there are bright days ahead for for Boise State. Well, as we close this out, any final thoughts here tonight, Glovelet?
I expect to see a lot of Skarner in my solo queue coming up.
Skarner, very, very strong. Once you get the Quicksilver Slash, he's not as threatening, and if you can kill him, as we saw in that very last fight, loses a lot of the oomph, but by the time Boise State took down the Skarner, everyone else there to make up for the lack of the sting on the side of Bethany Lutheran. Well, we will close out with our top plays from this series. Big shout out to Glovely for joining me and calling all the action, as well as our production for making us look and sound good, and for everyone in chat as well. Well, that will do it. The Idaho Army National Guard, who invites you to take your impressive critical thinking skills into real time with more than 10 jobs, offering a $20,000 bonus and your degree of choice paid for. They are the best team out there. Reach out on Twitch at iGuard Gaming. They're going to present you our top 5 plays from Bethany Lutheran's 2-0 win over Boise State in the Upsurge League.
Performance. And with that, I think that someone's going to have to start thinking about how they change up their strategy.
Going to count for the Dean. There's the penetrating stinger. Ethuk just going to get obliterated. Does pick up the kill, but he'll trade his life 1 for 1, and there's nothing Dean's going to be able to do to get away from this. Damage does come out from the Cogbob passive. Red Hot's rotating down. Great flash from Dean. Actually does get away. And Boise State able to just trade 1 for 1. Gravity Storm going to be used. Dashed in by Ethuk. He's going to flash.